Hi tribe, I watched this video on YouTube titled How Somalis Are Getting All That Money, out of curiosity, because I'm sure a lot of us are curious about that topic. And this video is on Dr. Kingori's YouTube channel, and he was interviewing this gentleman called Abdinur. And there are two very important lessons I learned about wealth from the Somali community, because he's Somali. And that is what I want to share in this series. And before I do, I also noticed that they spent a lot of time in that video talking about the role of education. And they were talking about how there are so many Kenyans, there's so many graduates in Kenya who have a degree, but they do not have a job. And so they talked about how a lot of us go to uni with the expectation of getting a job after uni, which is okay, but there's so many graduates who do not have job. And they also talked about how a lot of A students are employed by C students. Of course, with no statistics to back that up, but it's a sentiment that they shared. And that got me feeling some type of way, because I have learned a lot of lessons about the role of education in our lives, or rather the role of, going to uni or getting a degree or even getting your master's, getting an education from Dr. Wandia Njoya. And from that conversation, I concluded that their view of education is very short-sighted, because as Dr. Wandia Njoya teaches us, degrees, or rather getting an education, is supposed to improve our human experience by raising our consciousness and by giving us broad knowledge and mastery of skill. In short, a degree is supposed to teach us how to think so that we can be useful to society. Yeah? And Dr. Wandia also talked about how, the way when we were colonized as Africans, the role of education from colonialists was that education was supposed to give us Africans skills in order to be able to work in settler farms, right? That was the role of education. It's like it was directly linked to how productive or your output in terms of your employment. And we are still stuck in that narrative of what education is supposed to do for us. But, Dr. Wandia Njoya argues that that is not supposed to be the role of education. The role of education is supposed to help us think. Yes, to help us think. And we're also supposed to get an education because we enjoy learning, because knowledge is important. So, for example, right now in Kenya, or what has been happening in Kenya for the last 1 year or so, about how we talk about our current regime and the abductions and everything, right? So it is awesome to live in the current world of Gen Zs, because you can see there is a raised consciousness in Kenya where people are talking about what is happening in the country, where people are linking the issues that we are facing, for example, in healthcare, in education, to human dignity and to our quality of living. That is supposed to be the role of education. And Dr. Wandia also talks about how a lot of universities and a lot of lecturers in university, when that becomes a thing, then lecturers stop teaching students and they start talking about serving clients. And she's written a lot and she's talked a lot about that concept. And I will link one of the most in-depth blog posts where she talks about why we should link degrees from education. So I found that to be, very important, because it also helped me as a young Kenyan to delink what I think about my education with my employability. Lastly, it also reminded me that Julius Nyerere, the former president of Tanzania, argued that education is for liberation, that education is or was for liberation, and that graduates who give themselves a market value based on their education are actually slaves. Yes, he says they are nothing but slaves, which is very, very important. It's very important for young Kenyans to delink the concept of getting a degree or getting an education with your employability. And yes, so you should listen more to Dr. Wandia Njoya, because she will make you feel that at the end of the day, even if your degree did not give you direct employment, which is not supposed to be the point, that you are still a valued young Kenyan and you're still important for you to be here. Away from that, now I said that video taught me two things about the Somalis and how they view wealth, or how they treat money, or how they relate with money. The first lesson from the Somali community is invest in reciprocity. So Abdinur talks about how if he wanted 10 million today, he gave an example of if he wanted 10 million today, he'd only need a few hours to call a few people from his contact list, and at the end of the day, he would get 10 million. And he talks about how money in the Somali community moves based on a lot of trust, right? As opposed to a lot of us who are not from his community. If I wanted 10 million today, I would actually need, for example, to go to a bank, to go to a SACCO. I'd need a lot of paperwork in order for me to get that 10 million. And I'd probably not get that 10 million, and a lot of us would not. But him and his members of his community would actually get it would get the 10 million because of the trust they have. When it comes to money and the fact that they invest in each other. And so he talks about his wealth is his contact's wealth. And so if he wanted money, he would easily get it. And I remember Dr. Kingori asking him, what if I give money? Because you see, Abdinur was trying to pass this point that you should not hold on to money, that you should use money to empower the people in your community, in your family, in your network. And so Dr. Kingori asked him, what if I give people money and they do not pay me back, or they do not help me when they're in need? And so Abdinur insisted that, why are you giving people money who would not help you? And I really, really loved that lesson, because I am a believer that I cannot build wealth alone. I am a believer that I cannot build wealth alone, and I'm a believer that I need other people when it comes to building wealth, or when it comes to having access to money. I believe, or rather, like, one of my definitions of wealth is having such a strong family financially, or such a strong network of friends financially, that if I needed 1 million shillings today, I can have someone in my contact list that I can call and would send me 1 million without a lengthy explanation. And I would want to know that there are people out there, both my family and friends, who know that if they called me and they were stuck and they needed, 1 million, 500K, 250K, whichever amount of money, that they would call me and they would ask me for that money without a lengthy explanation of, oh, this is what I want to do with the money, this is what I'm going to pay back. Those lengthy explanations. The way we have to contort ourselves before we borrow money from a person. I would want my friends to be able to believe that, or my contacts, yes, or people I trust, to be able to believe that they can call me for an amount of money and I would be able to send them, and I trust that they are going to pay me back. That is the whole point, right? And so that point, invest in reciprocity, is something that I want to be deliberate, and I have been deliberate about building in terms of my contact list, and it's a thing that I would recommend for you too. You cannot build wealth alone, and you need people. So yeah, you cannot build wealth without people, and therefore means you need to be a trustworthy person when it comes to money. You need to be the kind of person that people trust, that when they loan you money, you're going to pay back. You're going to honor your word, right? That you honor what you say, you honor your promises when it comes to money. Be an honorable person when it comes to money. Pay back when you say you're going to pay back. And so that the same favors can be accorded to you, so that when you're stuck, people can give you money. Of course, that this doesn't negate the fact that we need to also take personal responsibility when it comes to our finances, in terms of building emergency fund, building our investment portfolio, getting insurance. But that being said, you cannot do it alone, especially in the kind of society or in the kind of system that we exist in. Once you start feeling like, oh, I have made it and I have enough money and I do not need people, life will show you that you actually need people. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is that Somalis have community insurance. So he gave a few examples of this. The first example being, if a Somali borrows money from you, right? Let's say they borrow 2 million and then they disappear. They do not pay back. They disappear. You can't find them. It's very easy for you to look for their brother, their sister, their family, their community, call the elders, and the elders will contribute money and they will pay you back. And I was just like, hey, that blew my mind, because they have that, what they call community insurance. So you will recover your money. If a Somali steals money from you, you just need to know a relative or another Somali that can lead you to their elders, and your money will be paid back. The other thing he talked about when it comes to provision, right? You see, like, Somalis come from very big families, 15 children, 8 children. As if you get a job, if you get out of the block, you help other people, you educate your younger siblings, you educate your cousins, you educate the community, because they are going to accord the same favor to you. Like, you can be a Somali without a job and you will still eat, you'll still have the latest iPhone, as he said, you will still, have a roof over your head, you'll still be okay, because they have community insurance. And this also works even for the big things in life, such as healthcare. If you're unwell, Somalis will contribute to get you to get a doctor, to pay your hospital bills and everything else, which I found really beautiful. Of course, there's a lot of discussion that we can have about that, but imagine belonging to such a community, or imagine belonging to the kind of family where, if anything happens, people will take care of me, right? Of course, there's nitty-gritties of people who take advantage, and he recognized that when he said, kuna watu hawawezi saidika, but for the majority of the community, that is how they operate. Yeah, so I really, really loved that, and I thought, imagine what would happen if a lot of us came from such families. So yes, it's very important to have conversations about money, conversations about wealth, because when we have more and more conversations about money, we learn a lot from each other. I was so glad to learn the 2 lessons and many more about the Somali community, how industrious they are, how, when they get money, for them, they think about how to multiply this money as opposed to keeping the money, even if at the end of the day, which is a beautiful thing for them. So for me, I am still from the school of thought that wealth is the money that you do not spend. So it's still very important for me to save and invest in order for me to build my wealth. But there are a few things I can learn from them. So yeah. Let me know if you watched that video and what you learned about the Somali community, or what you have to contribute to this conversation. Otherwise, this year, I want to do more of these Insta stories where I come here and give my opinion about, or rather my 2 cents about stuff.